Hello once again. Welcome to Chapter 2 of our course, Doing Ethics. Chapter 2 begins to get into the meat of what it means to do ethics. Living in postmodern times, we begin to think of ethics perhaps differently than others have before us. Many people have thought that ethics were central to the nature of human conduct, that they were part and parcel of the virtues or the requirements of living a good life. In the postmodern era, some, because of the difficulties inherent in making ethical judgments, abandon ethical thinking pretty much altogether. We'll be talking about some of those stances in this chapter, and I will only take a few minutes to introduce it to you, or introduce those ideas to you, and then you're on your own dealing with the chapter topics. Chapter 2 is on subjectivism, relativism, and emotivism. By its name, subjectivism indicates that pretty much right and wrong, morals and ethics are in the eye of the beholder. If I see something as being right, if it's right in my opinion, then it's right. If you happen to differ with me, then what you're doing is also right. But we may conflict, and ultimately there's no way to determine which of us is really right, because there is no real right. It's all up to ourselves. Relativism would say that. It's relative, it's contextual, that right and wrong are based on the situation or the time or the people, and that one cannot judge another. And emotivism would say that primarily our morals or our ethics come out of our emotions. We do what we feel like doing, and our emotions control right and wrong. Now, you may have differing opinions on that. You may come from a different place, but just remember, other people may be embracing these ideas that are very different from yours. How do you live in a world with those people, and how do they live with you? All right, cultural relativism says that things are right and wrong based on our culture. Various cultures have various takes on things. In one culture, people of one race may have power over people of another race or sex or nationality or religion or whatever. So right and wrong is dependent upon what the culture says. We find that when people immigrate from one nation to another, there's often a conflict of cultures. You'll hear a great fear among certain people about the institution of Sharia law in this country. Well, it's not likely that Sharia law would ever be installed here, but just the fear of it causes people of one culture to fear another. Subjective realism is another area. That I am my own judge, my own arbiter, and that my opinions and that my actions are to be judged only by me. Who are you to determine for me what's right and wrong? Emotivism, that the emotions of the moment would be keys to what should be done in any given situation. If righteous indignation and revenge are in the air that day, then perhaps that was the right thing to do. If having compassion and justice seem to be what is called for, then perhaps that is right. And then there's another point of view that says, indeed, there are ethical things. We can be objective, but the question is how to get everyone to agree, and what indeed are those things, and how can we determine them? Well, with relativistic points of view, there is a basis of thinking that everybody is infallible. There but for the grace of God go I, which pretty much allows us to excuse ourselves of most any consideration as to the morality of an act that we have committed. That genuine moral disagreement is impossible, because if things are relative, then truth is relative. and moral judgments are really just a matter of taste. Cultural relativism also says that if the culture believes one way or another, then that determines right. Perhaps it's not so much the individual, it's the individual's duty or obligation to follow the rules of the culture. Moral rightness and wrongness are embraced within one culture. Emotivism, as I said, is the view that moral judgments cannot be true or false, but instead are expressions of our emotional attitude. That moral disagreements are not disagreements of fact, but rather disagreements of attitude. Indeed, can somebody be objectively right or wrong, or is it that they were just feeling one way or another? There are no properties such as goodness or badness, and nothing is actually really good or bad. That it's a matter of our interpretation. It's a matter of the culture. It's a matter of subjective evaluation. This chapter will pose some challenges to you. The challenges may be that indeed you see some of yourself in some of these attitudes. You allow others to say and do things that you personally might feel are morally wrong, but you cannot pass judgment because you seem to have no sound basis. On the other hand, perhaps your basis is so strong that you become intolerant. The question of toleration is arisen in this chapter. Well, take a look at the chapter and move on through its ideas. Know that there is hope after this. There are indeed ways in which people will be able to pronounce right and wrong, good and bad, but that it's not just a matter of their saying so. We often, in this Facebook world, get in arguments based on the fact that someone else just doesn't feel the same as we do, so therefore they're wrong. We live in a world of alternative facts, as it's said. So read the chapter, go through the exercises, begin to develop a foundation for thinking, and we'll see you next week on chapters 3 and 4. Have a good week.